So we're going to start out this morning talking about instructional strategies that are perfect to use with brand new young readers. When you're thinking about all these different things that I'm showing you, you can think about them how they would work with a 4-year-old, but also how they could work with a 6 or a 7 or an 8-year-old. You know, we could have days and days and days of training around kindergarten. People go to Montessori training for an entire year and take AMI Montessori training to learn how to do some of what I'm going to show you in this hour. Some of these things are have videos that you can go and watch, and maybe you've already watched them. And some of them are things that we're going to make videos of, and some of them are around materials that we're in the process of creating right now. Okay. So to get us started, what I want to do is talk about an overview of the main pieces of what an instruction for a new young child looks like. So we're going to talk about this kindergarten training infographic for just a minute, and then we're going to talk about the pieces of it and some other instructional strategies. But I created this yesterday because it was a culmination of hours and hours and hours of conversations that Elaine and I have been having around the instructional strategies that we've already specifically taught you, the ones that also work not just for kindergartners, but for first graders, so that you're not learning a brand new program as much as you are going to take some of the skills that you already have and apply them to working with a younger child. But it's really important before we start this work to remember a couple of key pieces, that sounds are what drives reading. And I call this sounds are king, because I was just in some kindergarten classrooms and the teachers were doing all this great sound work, and then they kept attaching it to the letter names. And I thought, why are you doing that? That doesn't help the child. No, I didn't really think that. I thought, oh, I want to tell them they don't need to do that piece. They don't have to attach it to the letter names. You can leave letter names out of it. Now, a lot of kids that you're going to teach, whether you're tutoring or whether you are in a classroom, are already going to know the letter names. That's okay. You notice when we tap the charts, we use the letter name. That's okay. But when we're reading and when we're spelling and we're doing all of the work with arm spelling and secret decoder game, that even when we're writing the words, we're still just using sounds. Sounds are the focus. It's the sound symbol connection, even at this very youngest age, most importantly, at this very youngest age. So that is really a key piece to remember. And that all of the pieces that are on this infographic are showing you that what I'm telling you about these is that these are foundational skills. That doesn't mean these are the only things that are evidence-based that you can do, but these are, if you did all of these pieces, you would help most children understand the process of reading and the process of writing. We call that decoding and encoding. It's important to remember that children really lay the foundation for reading and spelling, or reading and writing, in the very beginning of their life. This phonological awareness, the ear training, begins from birth, when children are listening to our language. They're listening to our spoken language. They're hearing stories read to them, hopefully, hearing music. And in that work, there may be hearing rhymes or alliteration, and those pieces that sometimes we think of preschool teachers bringing to children help the children to start to understand that words are made of sounds. Actually, before they understand that words are made of sounds, they often understand that our language is made up of words, that each of our words is a discrete piece. And then they take the word and they understand that inside the word, there's beats in a word. We call those syllables, right? And we help the children break down our language into individual words. Sometimes people describe it as breaking sentences into words. So with young children, you can do a sentence walk where you say the sentence and they take a step in rhythm for every sentence. The bat is on the mat, and you would walk. The bat is on the mat. And they can move their hands, clapping them on their knees. They can walk one step at a time for every word that's in the sentence. And that helps them to understand that our language is made up of discrete individual words. Some kids don't know that. You think they might, but they don't. And they need to be directly and explicitly taught that. Then inside of words, we have syllables, right? Happy, happy. Well, that one's a little tricky, but how about rabbit, rabbit, right? It has 2 beats in it. It doesn't matter. We explore all of these beats within the words, all orally, all gross motor, all using that multisensory experience for the child. And then we're going to explore language in so many ways with the children that we've talked about there, in addition to exploring vocabulary. And a strong vocabulary is a precursor for reading and spelling. Children rely on their vocabulary to make meaning out of the words that they're reading. So children with low vocabulary or second language children need lots of support in educational settings to grow their vocabulary. We're going to talk about how we do some of that. One of the ways we do that is with the secret decoder game. Now, you notice the way I have this laid out, that I have different pieces and they have lines between them. Don't put too much effort into trying to figure out what comes first, what comes second, what comes third, what the sequence is, because in fact, all of these things can be happening simultaneously. And even though we're saying that phonological awareness, remember phono means sound, that we're training the ears, that phonological awareness, when you look at it, has stages that move toward something that we call phonemic awareness. You don't really have to understand all that, or know it or be an expert in it. What you have to know is that the sounds of the language are important, and how do we bring those sounds to the children? One way we do it is with the secret decoder game. There's a video of the secret decoder game on the Brain Friendly Reading YouTube channel. But the secret decoder game allows the child to be able to hear the sounds in the language. Now, for very young children, you can use objects when you're playing the secret decoder game. And I'm not going to spend a long time doing any of these pieces because for a lot of them, there's videos. But with a very young child, you can use objects, and you have maybe a cup, and you might have a dice. I like to typically choose objects that are like CVC words if I have them, but my object box is a little sparse. People have been taking my things. And a card. So I have my objects, and I'm going to take my objects and put them inside of a container and arm spell and let the children take the cards out. There's different ways you can play secret decoder game, but ultimately what you're doing is attaching arm spelling to the objects. So in this case, I have 3 objects. I could put them inside of a container and then have the child take them out one at a time, and we talk about what it is. This is a cup. This is a card. This is a dice. Well, this is 1 dice. I don't think I'd use dice. I think I might use a pen. This is a pen. And then you lay them down and you can say, I'm thinking of a word. The word I'm thinking of is this word, ard, ard. And the child is looking at these 3 objects. And John, this would be really helpful for you with your kids. The child is looking at the 3 objects and they're like, which one of these is ard? Which one of these? And the child, if they think they know, they can pick it up. Yes, that's a card. If you have a box or a little bag or a container, they can put the card back into the container, and now there's 2 objects left, a pen and a cup. And then you say, I'm thinking of another object. I'm thinking of and notice I'm arm spelling up, up. And then they find the cup and they put it away. Now listen, you have this game written up for you with a script. This is a scripted lesson that's available to you on your Google Drive. So you can go get the secret decoder game. Now, how do you do this with children? And you're like, I want to do this whole group. I don't have time to do this with small group. With individual and small group, the objects work really, really well. And a whole group, I do this all the time with I Spy. I do it with 5th graders. We're doing I Spy, and I find something in the room, and I'm like, I see a bull. A bull. And the kids go, oh, what is that? And Julie's told us multiple times in the training that she's done all this verbal arm spelling with the kids. You turn it into I Spy and it develops their phonemic awareness. It develops the ear training. With a young child, we use the objects. Why do we use the objects? Because we are developing vocabulary, that this is a card and this is a pen. You'll be surprised how many young children don't have the vocabulary or know that they might have read the word pen, but they don't know that this is a pen. See how it's got a little on the back, and it's very interesting for them. It draws their focus and their attention to the work. So we're building vocabulary with that work. We're building phonemic awareness with that work. If you have a lot of English language learners in your classroom, even if you have older children, then when you use this work, you're building vocabulary for those kids too, particularly if you'll have somebody in the class go touch it, right? Like I see whatever it is, a art, and kids go, I know a chart. And you're like, oh, great. The kids know it, but maybe 6 of the kids don't have a clue what you're talking about. But because 20 of them responded, you're like, we're good. It's those 6 kids that need somebody to go run, touch the chart. Well, not run, but walk carefully to go touch the chart, right? Sally, can you go stand by the chart? And then you can have kids go stand by all these different objects and arm spell them all again for one more round of repetition. I'm segueing into older children, but that can work with younger children too, in a secret decoder game that's not attached to tiny objects at a table, but a whole group situation where the kids arm spell it and somebody goes stand by it, stands by the object, and then you arm spell them all again, all together. Why? Because it's repetition. All right, the other piece that's on here is tap the chart, and you have a kindergarten chart available to you. And the kindergarten chart has strips across the top, and I don't know why I dropped a blends chart in here as an infographic, but we'll be looking at the kindergarten chart here in just a minute. And you're going to tap the chart with the kids, and you can start with just the first row of tapping, but remember, this is all call and response. So I don't know if you saw that video that Ellen from someplace up north in Michigan posted of her 5-year-old teaching her 2-year-old how to tap the chart, which I thought was incredible. So don't worry about trying that you're going to go too fast with the chart tapping. I used to, when I first started, I used to think, oh, I can only do so much. And there are some children like Lydia who could only handle so much, because just doing a, apple, at, those 3 things in sequence was so hard for her to be able to remember a, and then apple, and then that took a lot of brain power for her to do that. So it can be that you do need to introduce, like in John's case, working with children who have multiple issues, that you might need to introduce 1 square a day, but then you go back and you practice it every single day. There's only 26 letters in the alphabet. If you did that for 26 days inside of 5 weeks, you would have learned the whole chart. So be mindful of the fact that you want to go as quickly as you can and as slowly as you need to. And the children can be tapping way ahead on the chart than what it is you're teaching, even at a young age. And then the other 3 pieces that we're talking about here are the initial sound work. So there's a video on the website called the Phonemic Awareness Sorting Activity that gives you an example of what this initial sound work is. And I'm going to do a little bit here today too, but it's basically matching a letter with pictures or objects that have the same sound. And I'm going to demo some of that with some of the materials that we have. And then and why do we do that? We want to do that because it helps to develop the child's phonemic awareness. They're listening to the word and going, what's that first sound? Now, often kindergarten teachers are already teaching that. They're teaching the children not only the sound symbol connection, but they're also teaching them to listen for the first sound in the word. What sound is that? You can do that work in an isolated way with objects or pictures and the letters themselves in a center activity. You can also, as the children get really proficient with initial sounds, then you can do ending sounds. So dog wouldn't be sorted by D, it would be sorted by G. Rug would be G. And you would be sorting by the ending sound. Now that's very interesting. for a child to do. Now, of course, they have to be super proficient with the initial sound, and then they do ending sound. And then the hardest thing for them to do is the medial sound, that middle sound, which is always the vowel sound. So can you have them sort by the vowel sounds? Absolutely. But remember that that one is typically more challenging if they're just doing sound work. If the words are written, that's easier because they can identify the letter. But when they're listening to that sound, rug and mitt and kid and tug, and they're listening for what is the vowel sound, that's the hardest piece. But all three of those are a sequence that you can use to develop the phonemic awareness. And it doesn't just have to be short vowel sounds either, nor does it have to be or s. It can be, they can be sorting words by bull and cur and sh and ch at the end of a word, or ch at the beginning of a word. So you can use pictures that have blends, have them sort by the blends, a brush and a broom and a brick, versus a glass and can't think of another goal word on the top of my head, but they can sort by those blends too. So notice that this initial sound work starts very simply, and then you can continue to layer it on, even in kindergarten. It's just fine. It's a way to differentiate this work. So the children that come in who are already able to do all of that initial sound sort, go ahead and move them ahead. Ending sounds, medial sounds, blends at the beginning, your digraphs with your CH and your SH. So, and then by the time, and you don't have to go through every possible iteration of that. The goal is to develop the child's awareness to be able to hear the sounds and the words. Always the goal is to hear the sounds and the words. The goal is for the child to be able to read with accuracy and fluency for their age, right? So we could take the kids through every possible iteration of this work, but actually we want to just get them to the place where their brain is able to decode the words that are in front of them so that they can use reading to explore all that's available to them in the world. We're teaching them a skill. Reading isn't the skill in and of itself. It's not the goal. Reading isn't the goal in and of itself. Reading is a tool that we are helping them to put in their toolbox. So as preschool and kindergarten teachers, it's important to remember that while we spend a lot of time focused on this reading activity, that the children are really interested in exploring their world, whether that's the community around them, the town they live in, or as Montessori would say by elementary, the entire cosmos. All right, next activity is word building. So you have a scripted lesson for word building for CVC letters, but ultimately word building looks like this. You dictate words to the child, and the child uses a letter box or a tile box, not writing with their hand, but you're dictating words to the child, and the child is building those words. When you say mat, and the child goes at. And this is a great activity too, John, for you with your children. If you had tiles available, you could say at, and they find what says and they find their letter and they pull it down. And they find their and they pull it down. What says t, and they find their t and they pull it down. Now, even after, here's the most important piece, even after they have spelled mat, they may not be able to go back and read mat. It's really important. Spelling is actually easier than reading because we're finding one letter at a time. Think about it. This is one. All I have to do is find the M. Just got to find that A. T, and find the T. Now I'm using letter names to make it clear for you. I would never use letter names with the child. So that is very straightforward for the child. When we go to read, we have to use a more complex skill set. So you can dictate words to a child and they can build lots and lots of words, and maybe they can go back and read them. If they can, you can do it. But if they can't, don't try to get them to read because you think the goal is for them to read. They're going to get to the reading, but they're going to get to the reading on the back of the secret decoder game, tapping the chart, the sound, the individual sound work, and all of this word building that you're doing with them. All of those pieces build the structure that then supports the child in the reading. Okay. And handwriting is down here at the bottom because, of course, we want to include handwriting into a kindergarten program. And I would suggest following the sequence like in Handwriting Without Tears and using a sequence in a curriculum. Handwriting Without Tears is one of my favorites. However, I would not begin handwriting with a pencil and paper. I would do all the handwriting work, gross motor first. And particularly if you're working in a preschool classroom, having the children trace the letter that's already written. I don't know if you've seen any videos of me working with Lydia, who had pretty severe dysgraphia. And I will write the letter and then she will trace the letter, and we call it rainbow letters, where I go first with a piece of chalk on the chalkboard and then she traces it gross motor. She does the same thing with her felt tip pens at home. She'll write the letter with the felt tip pen and then trace it. And over the years, she's gotten where she does the same thing, but it's smaller oftentimes, unless we're working on cursive at the chalkboard. So you want to start gross motor and big with tracing. And then when the child is ready, has done the work with that, then they can move on to doing it by themselves. And we're going to talk about handwriting some more in the dysgraphia webinar. And a lot of what I'm going to show you in the dysgraphia webinar directly correlates to working with younger children too. So, and then bringing the kids to the pencil and paper think of that as a culminating activity or a culminating experience. And, you know, with young children, I really like to use felt tip pens. And I don't see one in my bag to show you, but you know what a felt tip pen is, because there's just less, it moves across the page so much more easily. And boy, in Allen Park, all of those teachers have lap whiteboards with expo markers. I'm like, they have moved into expo marker land with those children. And they said it's because the kids enjoy it, so they're willing to do it. They write more than they would if they were doing pencil and paper. And they've been using it for several years, that strategy for several years. And I was like, that's interesting. That's the same thing I've noticed, that if you give the child a whiteboard and you tell them, write and say it, they'll write 20 times. If I put a pencil and a piece of paper in front of them, they're like, 1, 2, 3, are we done? Am I done? So whatever it is that gets the child to practice writing and saying the sound. And that's the most important piece with all of this, is that when they're doing the writing, they're verbalizing, even if it's subvocally.